This video is a special request I've had to talk about how to fence silver left-handed. And being a natural left-hander and having fenced left-handed silver exclusively for many years when I first started, I should be able to be in a position to talk about this with some authority. So I'm just going to show you what I do, why I do it the way that I do, and look at where it conforms to silver's principles, and perhaps in some cases it might not. But let's just have a look at how I do silver left-handed. So first of all, probably worth just looking at briefly what are the principles of movement that silver gives us, because he gives us a number of them. Some of these are mutually inconsistent and are there to be used in different circumstances, basically. So first thing he says is, of course, that you should move in continual motion, always traversing upon the right hand side and the left. So you don't always go right and you don't always go left, silver says. You go both. And generally speaking, if I am sword foot back, such as in open, I will tend to walk this way. Okay? If I happen to be in garden, I will tend to walk this way. So I'm basically always going to walk forward because it's more comfortable. And if I'm left-handed, that doesn't change. If I'm in open, I will still want to walk this way. If I'm in garden, I will still want to walk this way. So that principle applies exactly the same way as it does if you're right-handed. Second principle he gives us is about choking up the blow before it's in its full force. By which he means if you're in open, Miles delivers a downright blow. I want to move forward and left to intercept that earlier in its arc, choke the blow up before it's in its full force. And if we do that at that angle, just so you can see this, you see how I've stopped it while Miles' arm is not quite yet in line with his shoulder. So that's what it's mechanically weaker if I can get further left. Okay? And so if I can do that, that's great. And in particular garden, he's very specific. That's what you want to do. As a left-hander, this becomes rather difficult because if I'm in garden, and just do something fairly low there, so I actually use garden, trying to step this way, as you can see, it's a very awkward position and it's mechanically really weak. Miles puts just a little bit of oomph into that. There's no way I can hold it. So, stepping forward and left into a blow in order to choke it up when I'm left-handed is not really a thing. I could, of course, do it that way, but then I run into the issue of the undercut and getting my leg cut off, which is the third principle that silver tells us. This is particularly in the quarterstaff, he mentions this, but it's applicable to all weapons, which is if you're parrying point up, you want to be at a distance where your upper body is guarded by your sword and your lower body is too far away to be hit. Okay? So if I'm here, my upper body is actually in range to get hit. Miles would hit me there, and of course that means I can hit him, I can riposte. But my lower body is far enough away that if he gets underneath my hilt, because it only covers me up to there, he's not going to hit my leg. So that principle is of course the same, and when you're left-handed, it's really actually important because if we're saying both circle forward, okay, we are actually a lot closer to each other this way than if I was here, okay? So don't move, Miles. So this is a good wide distance, okay, I can attack on a lunge from here. I'm going to bring my foot to exactly the same position, and now I can hit him, okay? Our sides, when they're lined up here, are a little bit closer than they are than when we're the same footed or same handedness. And so judging that distance for the undercut there is really important. I hit a lot of people there because they're used to fighting right-handers and they misjudge that by a couple of inches. And the last principle silver gives us, which is particularly applicable to things like sword and dagger and sword and buckler, is to turn to point at the blow. So I'm right-handed. So if you give me a downright blow, talks about compassing the rear foot away from the blow in order to basically forming a structure, a force ramp to take that blow there. I've got to be careful that my leg is not being undercut there, but the idea is swivel to point at the blow. That is another principle of movement that sort of gives us, that is also sometimes applicable. So, as a left-hander, how do I apply this stuff? Let's do it sort of fight by fight. So we'll start with open fight, okay? Against any other guard than open, I do it exactly the same way, okay, as I do. I mean, the same attacks as I would if I were right-handed. However, when it's open versus open, if Miles gives me a downright blow, I can step back out of the way and come in on the outside of that, okay? This blow is coming in here, let's do this at matrix speed, boom, and it's a simple pass back. I get out of the range of that and I get to come in behind his sword, okay? To the arm or the head or the body or whatever. So this for me is a really easy defense, okay? And it's very hard for Miles to do anything about it. If we were both right-handed and I was trying to counter up, Miles can redirect into that and jam it up and we get a sort of clashy, bindy thing. When he's doing a downright blow against a left-hander, that is not possible. So it's actually a really risky thing to do, and of course it's the same for me. If I try and do a downright blow at Miles, he can come in behind my sword and I can't really stop it. So as a left-hander fighting somebody else in an open fight, I'm not going to do my down left blow, cut number one, okay? So if we're actually in this situation, I would always cut at this kind of reverse angle, because that way if Miles countercuts at me, I've got a chance to jam that up and prevent being counter hit. But more often than not, I'm not going to use open versus open as a left-hander. I'm going to choose something else. So that brings us to guard and fight. So you can stay open for me. Okay, so first of all, because of that distance issue, my forearm and elbow is a lot more vulnerable than it is here, okay? This is really just asking for that arm to be attacked. So the way that you deal with that is you circle really quite rapidly around to the right, okay? I can't step this way and try and choke it up, as I've already shown. So I can't gather left, I've got to gather right, because it is biomechanically forced upon me, okay? So if I keep going this way, that works. And it cuts out. He's never going to attack me on this side. He's only got one line of attack. If I'm going right, he's got to come at me at this side, and I've got a simple series of defences that I can use there. So if you're in guardant, walk around to the right, okay? The other thing people sometimes talk about is doing guardant with the other foot forward like that, okay? Yeah, kinda. I used to do this. So if Miles attacks with a downright blow, I'm going to come and do probably the same counter attack as I would from open. I'm not going to try and parry it point down from there. I could also parry it point up. But from here, the primary defense is going to be to step back out of the way and use that lovely cut round to the outside that I get as a left-hander. If Miles attacks to the other side, that's just lovely for me, okay? Having a nice guard parry and reverse cut into any target I like, that's really nice, okay? The reason I don't really use sword foot back anymore is it's very static. I want to move this way because that is kind of where I'm pointing. But if Miles attacks this way as I'm moving, I'm in serious trouble. I might get a parry up, but I'm going to be in danger. I can't slip back. So it really becomes a very static defense. I've got to stand here and wait for Miles to attack before I defend myself. So I tend not to use that anymore. It's a thing, you can do it, but it's a lot less satisfactory than being able to just walk around, which I can do if I'm here. and I can do it if I'm here. Variable fight. This really doesn't change a lot, but Swetnam says that when he's talking to right-handers saying, what do I do against a left-hander? And he says that really your best guard is the back sword guard, which is an extended outside guard. So to be honest, I tend to use that more than anything else when I'm being left-handed. So I keep it really simple. Okay, slip and riposte on that side. On this side, I can do an inside parry, or I can do a hanging parry. And that's a lot safer than it is when I'm right-handed, because if I do a hanging parry from here and Miles S cuts me, I might not be able to get that back up in time, which is why I sort of says don't do it. However, doing a reverse cut and then coming back on this side for an S cut is really a lot more awkward and a lot slower than it is the other way around. So I can do that, and Miles turning from there to there is just not as ergonomically pleasant, and so it's going to be slower, so I don't have much trouble dealing with that. So I tend to use this a lot more, okay? And I've got all sorts of different defenses. I can move sideways, I can slip this foot back that way to try and get a little bit of that choking up, but I can equally just go slip straight back, that's fine. And I can also occasionally go around this way and get a sort of broadboard countercut in there. So I feel you've got more to do from here than you do from here or from here. In terms of attacks, I just go. Right, garden. Oh, okay, so obviously if Miles is in garden, he's got the same problem as I do with that extreme vulnerability to that cut. So if you come down and match me to sort of an outside guard position, okay, I'm going to tend to want to step around to the flank that way if I can. Miles, of course, will want to do the same thing, so quite often things end up quite linear. I'm trying to go this way, Miles is trying to go the same way. No, don't go that way. Okay? Let's just do that. Miles conforms to my traversing. You can see I get right behind him. I get right round his flank and hit him, which is... So if you're fighting a right-hander who's uninitiated and they conform to your traversing, that's great. People who know what they're doing aren't going to do that. They're going to want to go that way as well. So I go this way, Miles goes that way. It's just, it doesn't work, so you end up fighting a lot more linearly than you do, generally speaking. I will, if I'm on an inside guard, I will throw the reverse cut on a traversing passing step out the other way. And that's okay, and it allows me to get out and recover. And I guess that's the last thing to talk about is the recoveries. You got a garden for me, okay? My recoveries are going to be that, and if you're in outside, I can do that. As a left-hander, this one is your friend. You've got to get really good at doing that. Yeah, all right, let's do that. So here, I've got to be able to get up into that really quickly. Okay, this is the equivalent of garden for me. So any cut that I make on this side, even I'll just start it open even. There. What that means is my footwork changes a little bit. As a right-hander, doing a cut one, do go garden for me, I will tend to step out to the right so that as that recovery comes, I get that nice little swivel, which makes my recovery a little bit faster and allows me to get garden up in time. If, however, go back to outside for me, if I go this way, and Miles parries and riposte, and I'm trying to do that. This is not, that's really awkward, and I kind of can't see what's happening. So doing this in a linear step outwards and then recovering this way runs the danger of just actually being driven into me if Miles just wants to sort of bind and run in. Okay, it's got no structure behind it. So my attack is going to be, again, linear. I'm just going to come straight in and I'm going to fly up this way so that I've got a nice pointy structure there, so if Miles comes in with any sort of force, I can hold that up, grapple, and whatever. And I guess that's the final point is grappling. Grappling is much easier, okay? If somebody attacks you on this side, and you get to here, there is no counter grapple Miles can make, okay? Even if he gets this hand in the way, he can't stop the sword, okay? On this side, if you come in that way, okay, there's really no grappling here. And the counter grapples are, you know, so counter. So there's no grappling on that side. It really only happens on your inside line, and it becomes really simple because they can't do anything about it once you've got there, and you really only need to check them for just a moment, and you get a nice cut round to the outside line, and there's nothing they can do about it. So that's essentially what I do. Avoid open versus open unless they're silly enough to do the attacking, in which case you go, great, thank you. Don't do this sword foot back. It's just static, and if the other person's moving, they will find a way through and clobber you. Gun this way. That works. That's okay. This is going to work exactly the same way as it does right-handed, but honestly, you're better off closing that line with a good outside guard. Okay, then all you've got to do is watch that leg, so you do what Sweatham says and slip it back at every defence. You can do more sophisticated things, but that's good enough. And I guess the other thing to say is, obviously, I would prefer somebody to attack me this way than on this side. And so sometimes I will do an imbricata type guard. So rather than the hanging guard that covers my head, I will deliberately take it out to the outside in the hope of tempting them to attack that way, because that's what I really want. People don't tend to fall for that more than once, and of course I've got the problem if he goes down a variable, he's got the beat to the side, which is what Phil says to do. So you've got to watch it, but coming out to the outside like that can sometimes tempt people to strike to inside, which is what you want. So that, very briefly, in one take, is more or less what I do when I'm doing silver left-handed.
So to finish off with, I'm just going to have a bit of advice, particularly for left-handers out there. So regardless of your fencing system, you will figure out a left-handed thing that works for you. You'll be able to adjust the techniques to work with your offhand. But when it comes to companion weapons, you know, sword and dagger, sword and buckler, broadsword and taj, or whatever, I can strongly recommend that you learn that right-handed. So put the offhand weapon in your dominant hand and use the sword in the other one. A couple of reasons for that. First of all, you'll be able to do the system conventionally, which will make life a lot easier for both you and your instructor. But also you will be able to amaze your opponents with the dexterity with which you manipulate the offhand weapon. Quite often when you are teaching companion weapons to right-handers, you give them a buckler in their left hand and they've got no idea what to do with it, and they can't hold it up, and they stick it behind their back so it doesn't confuse them. Whereas as a left-handed person, you will be able to use that companion weapon very effectively, and it will then teach you how to use the sword in your right hand as well, and before you know it, you'll be doing two swords which is extremely fun. Yes button. Yes, I agree entirely. So that was it. That was my bit of advice. So hope you enjoyed it.